How much pork could a pork chop chop if a pork chop could chop pork? Let's find out. Hello and welcome back to the Sazon kitchen. I'm your host Victor, and today I'm going to show you all how to make a delicious, juicy pork chop with some additional side dishes to go along with it. So here's what you're going to need. Pork chop or pork loin, Sazon pork chop seasoning, Sazon granulated garlic, olive oil, asparagus, onions, and lastly, salt. Okay, so with all the ingredients laid out in front of me, I'm going to go ahead and put on an apron and start seasoning up these pork chops. Much better. First thing I'm gonna do is get some olive oil and just lightly apply it. We're gonna rub it in. And remember that tip I had from one of the last episodes is always keep one hand dry. Now we're gonna grab our Sazon pork chop seasoning. And this is a really thick cut, so we're gonna lay it on a little heavier here. Pat that in, and we're gonna flip them over. Okay, same thing. Light olive oil. Rub in, pork chop seasoning, pat that in, and what we're gonna do is make sure we get the sides. That way we're not losing any flavor on any bite. These look beautiful and they're ready to marinate. So I'm gonna put these in the fridge for 15 minutes and then I'll show you the next step. Okay, so pork chops are sitting in the fridge marinating. Our next step is to turn on the oven and preheat it to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. This is gonna be our roasting temperature for the asparagus. And then we'll come back to the prep table and start the onions. Turn it to 400. Oven is now preheating. And what we're gonna do is grab a small cutting board and chop up the onions. Now what we're gonna do for the onions is caramelize them. Now this process normally takes like an hour. I'm gonna see if I can cheat it and do it in like 15 minutes. So the trick for the onion here is we're gonna go for thinly sliced. Whew, starting to water. Did you really cut onions if you're not crying? It's good, okay. Now for this, I'm just gonna use 2 onions because that should be plenty and I don't feel like crying anymore. Does anyone know any tricks for not crying while cutting an onion? Leave that in the comments down below. Okay, so the next part of this cook is going to be right in here, the cast iron pan. What we're gonna do is take these beautiful onions that we chopped and we're gonna put them in there with a bunch of oil and salt, and we're gonna put it on a medium-high heat, and we're just gonna turn them around a lot for about 10 minutes straight until they are golden brown, soft, delicious, and ready to plate. So let's go over to that stovetop with these. And this goes here, and let's turn this bad boy to medium-high. Now we'll get some oil in there. Drop in our onions. And we'll go ahead and add salt. Another thing that would really help this recipe out, but I don't actually have, is butter or beer. By putting them into the onions when it's cooking, you're actually getting additional flavor, coloring, and helps with the overall cooking process. So now this is just gonna be the constant battle of stirring these while I wait for the oven to preheat. Yeah, see the onions starting to get a little translucent. We're just constantly stirring, moving them around. This is exactly what we want. It smells so fragrant. Oh my God, it's delicious. I could eat all of this right now. While we're waiting for these onions to caramelize, why don't you guys go ahead and like and comment on the video. Let me know how you guys feel about onions down below. You know, while I'm here, I'm actually gonna add a little bit of Sazon black pepper seasoning right here, just to give it that little bit of extra flavor. Wow, this is coming along really great. Woo. Oven's ready too, that's perfect. Right after this, we'll go ahead and prep our asparagus. And it is crazy how much the onions reduce when we're doing this. That's why, you know, I think if you're serving a lot of people, it's probably a better idea to do like 4 or 5 onions, because you're not really gonna get that much out of it. You're losing so much of the volume. So I'm actually gonna call it here. I think these have a beautiful color, and with the residual heat in the pan, they're actually gonna keep cooking a little bit more. I'm gonna kill the heat and go ahead and move it off this burner. But let's go back to the asparagus table and set it up. Okay, asparagus time. This is gonna be really easy. What we're gonna do is grab this bundle, lay it out like so, drizzle some olive oil, just like that. Grab some salt, and we're gonna grab some garlic powder, sprinkle that across. A nice dusting like that's gonna be good. And then all we're gonna do is place this into the oven for 15 minutes, and we're gonna cook our pork chops. Now remember, the 15 minutes is gonna allow these things to roast. So if you start seeing browning before, or maybe even a little bit after, pull them out. We don't want them to overcook. Okay? Okay. There we go. And we'll set a timer for 15 minutes. Done. Pork chop time. Okay, here are beautiful pork chops. Now what we're gonna do is get a big cast iron pan, and we're gonna cook these in batches. I'm gonna try to see if I can get 2 in there at a time, maybe even 3. And what we're gonna do is about medium-high heat, 3 minutes on one side or until browned and you get a good crust. Flip it over, we'll lower the heat to medium, and then cook it until it reaches an internal temperature of 135 degrees Fahrenheit. Oh, big cast iron. First thing we're gonna do is get some oil in the pan. Just a little bit because it already has some. Get this on medium-high. And we're gonna wait until this is rip-roaring hot to put the pork chop in. Okay, the oil is hot enough now. Should hear a good sizzle. I don't know where my bigger tongs are, so. Beautiful. Lower the heat down to a medium. Remember, we are looking for an internal temperature of 135 degrees, so I'm gonna keep an eye on that with my instant read thermometer. And when these are done, I'm gonna take them off and put the new set on. While I was cooking, the asparagus finished up, so let's grab these. Yeah, look at that. Love that. I'm gonna put these off to the side. Okay, as you can see, we're almost to that perfect internal temperature, 135. Pull these out. Good crust, beautiful. Move these over here. Okay, with those out, we're gonna add in the others. And remember, we're looking for a crust, then we flip. Okay, so I just wanna show you guys really quick while the other ones are cooking. Look at the crust. Look at how like juicy it is. Look at that coming out, look at that. Ooh, that is a good pork chop. I'm so excited for these other ones to finish so I can go ahead and eat one already. Okay, let's check these out. Now what I'm gonna do like last time is put the instant read thermometer just in the thickest part. We're just gonna let that sizzle. Boom, okay, done. Okay, everyone has a home. That is some good looking food right there. I mean, look at these pork chops, so delectable. Asparagus roasted to perfection. Onions got a little overcooked because I left them in the cast iron pan, but that's okay. They still taste really good, I promise. Look, I'll even prove it. Golden. So what I'm gonna do here is cut into the pork chop a little bit. And I don't know if you guys can see this, but that is juicy, it is tender feeling, and I bet you it's even better tasting. That is phenomenal. Like that is one of the best pork chops I've ever had in my life. Wow. Okay, and we dried the onions. Next thing we gotta do is try a little asparagus. Such an easy meal. A little time, you know, because the asparagus, the onions, but the pork chops cook really fast. They cook really well. Make sure you get bone in too, because you're gonna hold on to a lot of that juice. That's like, you see it all coming out here. That's what you get. High heat to get a crust, and then you reduce the heat, mellows it out, cooks the meat nice and evenly through. This is a perfect pork chop. And the thing that I love most about this seasoning is how bright it is. And by bright, I mean you get like notes of citrus and all that flavor that's in there. And when you're tasting the savoriness of the pork, you're like, oh my God, like I don't remember pork chops tasting like that. And it's because it's never tasted better than with this. And if you don't believe me, buy your own bottle over at www.don'tsazon.com or try one of our many other products that'll make cooking a dream. So easy, so simple, and ready to use right out of the bottle. This is easily just one of the best meals. You're gonna eat this and feel so satisfied, so satiated, and all you're gonna want is to keep eating more. And that's all we want when you cook with Don't Sazon, is we want you guys to always come back, and I believe the flavor speaks for itself. And with that being said, guys, remember, a house isn't a home without Don Sazon. I'm Victor, and I'll see you guys next week.